Welcome back to the Ed Morrissey Show. Today is Thursday, January 7th, 2016. We're getting ready for the big election year, and this is the first show of the year. Joining us, as always, on Thursdays, Duane, Generalissimo Patterson of the Hugh Hewitt Show. How are you doing today, sir?
More equitable than Wall Street, apparently.
Yeah, what's the latest on Wall Street? I haven't been following it, but I heard it got off to a bad start today.
Well, when China does the things it does and North Korea does the things it does, it got a bunch of people spooked, and it hasn't planed out yet. It's still, I don't know if it's off as we speak or not, but it was down early this morning.
It was the futures were off at the beginning, like 300 points.
Yeah.
So
you
knew it was not going to be a good day on Wall Street, but who knows? Maybe it'll settle down by the time we get off the air here. But Duane, there's a lot of things that need settling down. Well, first off, before we even get to that, how was your New Year's?
New Year's was fine. Took the Radiant Mrs. Radio Blogger to go see Point Break in IMAX, the reboot of Point Break on New Year's Eve, and fine flick, actually. Lots of good effects, and it's really cool to see it in 3D in IMAX. And the movie let out, and we walked out of the theater at literally 11:59, so timing was pretty good.
Not bad.
It was fun.
Point Break, huh? So is it a remake or just kind of a reimagining of Point
Kind of
Break?
both.
Okay.
Kind of both.
Because they had the wingsuits, and I know that I guess that's to replace the skydiving thing that they were doing in
They
Point
did
Break.
the wingsuits. They did a lot more snowboarding. I mean, I have no. I mean, who knows how to make movies? I mean, you're going to be talking to people later that know how to make movies.
I am.
How's that for a shameless plug?
Shameless plug coming up. Peter Berg, yes.
The thing about movies is, I understand a lot of it was CGI, and there's all sorts of ways to do that. But some of the stunts, I mean, it's amazing nobody died making that movie. Just seeing some of the stuff they did, it was like watching the X Games, the movie.
X Games, the movie, huh?
Yeah, it's kind of what it was like seeing.
So it's kind of like Triple X then, because with Vin Diesel.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's just, I called it sort of the millennials, James Bond, because basically it was just jam packed with all that type of stuff. Interesting.
All sorts of stunts, and
there you go.
Not really any plot to speak of to tie it together, but there you go.
There you go. All right. So lots of stuff going on today, Duane, and this week. I'm not even sure where you want to start. We did our normal show prep today, which
It's your show, Coach East.
It is my show. So since it's my show, first off, let's talk about Obama and guns.
Yes.
Now, there was a big buildup for the gun stuff this week. I mean, he's been talking about this since October, about how he's going to take executive action. He's been talking about various different aspects of gun control. At one point, he was praising Australia's gun control policy, which was basically to seize everybody's semi-automatic weapons.
Right.
And it got the big unveil, I guess Tuesday, but we started finding out what was in it on Monday. But we got the big unveil on Tuesday.
Right. There's nothing there.
There's, almost literally nothing there. There is something that is concerning, but
we're gonna clarify it and tell you exactly what the rules are already on the books. And boy, we mean it this time. Except that they don't prosecute the rules on the books anyway.
Right, they don't prosecute the rules on the books. Although I'm suspecting that they're going to try to look for ways on this one little change, which is to redefine who is a gun dealer without actually defining it. It's one of those things. I guess it's sort of like. Pornography is the right context, but I can't think of obscenity. Obscenity, wasn't it? Wasn't it one of the Supreme Court justices that says, "I can't define it, but I know what it is. I know what it is when I see it."
Right.
Apparently, that's the same approach that the Department of Justice is now going to take.
They honestly think if they do this, what's going to happen is some bad guy that has ill intent is going to do a shooting like the San Bernardino shooters.
Right.
They are going to say, well, they've got to do a background check on me, even if I buy this gun or even if I get somebody to go get this gun for me. That's going to swallow up. So I guess I may better just abandon my plans altogether and not even worry about the pipe bombs either. It's ludicrous. It's not going to. There is nothing here that it would stop anything. Bad guys break the law, And even if he comes up with an executive order, which is a supersedent to the law, bad guys are still going to break it. That's what they do. It's
well, not only that, but I mean, how many? I mean, we talk about this gun show loophole, which is not what this is, by the way. This is something else.
It's not.
Which the gun show loophole doesn't exist. This whole idea of a gun show loophole is that a gun show basically might facilitate private sales, right? I have a pistol, I want to unload it, somebody else wants to buy it. If they're both at a gun show, maybe you can do that. But anybody who's selling firearms as a business still has to do it through a licensed, through a federal firearms licensed dealer. And so the loophole that they're talking about doesn't exist, even to the extent that you have those sorts of gray area transactions.
They're talking about private sales.
They're talking about private sales, and less than 1% of all firearms that are sold go through that little gray area. And
a lot of those that do are technically, I mean, they're illegal ones anyway. I mean,
right.
if you're a crime syndicate and you're gun running and you're providing weapons out of your trunk to some gangbanger that wants to go shoot up something, that's technically illegal anyway.
Well,
I mean,
that's how do criminals for the most part get their guns? They either steal them or they buy them from somebody who's stolen them.
Correct.
That's how you. So if you want to address the issue of guns and crime, that's where you start. No, this doesn't do that. What this does is it takes people who aren't committing crimes and puts more restrictions on them.
Right. Now, imagine, if you will, extending it to a car. Okay, you own the pink slip. You have the title of a car. You want to get a new one, but you don't want to get completely taken in the backside by getting a lowball offer for the trade-in. So you want to sell it on your own, put it on eBay, put it on Craigslist, whatever. And so you're selling your car. Somebody says, "Yep, that's a fine car. I want to pay you 15,000 simoleons," or whatever it is. So.
Right.
All of a sudden now, according to this, you'd have to do a full background check because that guy, he may be a drunk and he may use that car to commit a crime. He may get lit up and drive behind the wheel and kill a bunch of kids. And so we can't have that on our conscience. We've got to stop the end of a bunch of kids being killed by drunks. So we're going to make sure that all private sales in this country, you've got to do a full background check on. Who's going to do that? How in the world does anybody an individual citizen now have to conduct a background check on somebody else? It just doesn't happen.
It doesn't happen. No, it doesn't happen. And it's not going to, basically what this is going to do is it's going to intimidate a few people, a few hobbyists who might feel like they're close to the edge of this thing into getting out of those types of transactions. And that business will just get picked up by gun shops. I mean, basically that's what's going to happen.
It'll happen, or the people will just do it anyway and ignore it.
Well, they'll do that too.
Yeah, I mean, it's unenforceable.
It's unenforceable. They're not enforcing it now, by the way. We should point this out. They're not even enforcing it now.
Nor did they even add the money that Obama's trying to wring the Republicans out over right now, saying, well, we need more money for this, and we need more money for these agents, and we need more money for this. Where was he about 3 weeks ago when he had the Republicans by the short hairs and bent over a barrel because
Paul Ryan said none of this ever came up in the omnibus.
None of it. He didn't ask for a dime of this.
None of it came up.
It's all politics all the time. This is a squirrel little shiny object over here because North Korea just fired off a freaking nuke, probably, and the Middle East is getting worse.
But Duane, he teared up.
Yeah,
the man teared up during the press conference. Obviously, this is.
Did anybody check the podium for onions?
Andrea Tantaros made that accusation.
I
but
was going to give her credit.
Honestly, though, I actually think it was legit. I think he's just frustrated. I think that's what that was. I think he sees himself as on the side of the angels. He's surrounded there by the families of the victims. I actually think that was legit. And besides which, it really doesn't matter if it was legit or not. The point is that we don't adopt public policy by the tear barrel. I mean, we just don't do that. And he can cry all he wants, but this is the same guy who had a moment of silence for terror victims while he was on the fourth green. I mean, this is it's a little disingenuous to say, well, he's crying. Obviously, he's very affected by this. He's got a particular set of priorities that calls on his emotions. This happens to be, and legitimately so. Everybody feels horrible about people who are victims of any crime, any violent crime, regardless of whether it's guns, knives, whatever. But none of this is on point to the issues that he's bringing up. I mean, he's talking about these mass shootings, and he's talking about a change in definition of gun dealers. Why not go after, and he does actually, and you got to give him credit for this, why not go after mental health, which he did. He wants more money for mental health. Okay, that's fine. I think that's a legit response to the mass shootings issue. But why are we going after people who are already abiding by the law? Why aren't we dealing with the issues that are actually driving some of this stuff? And we just seem to be blaming the inanimate objects for the issues that arise from people themselves. That to me is the problem.
We should just ban all houses, because too many houses are used as crack houses and safe houses. And so, let's just ban all houses. I mean, it's just absurd. The whole argument is absurd. It's a phony premise to begin with. Do we want to do something about all these random acts of violence? Yeah, you betcha, we do. And there are real things we can do. There are all sorts of mental health things that we need to do to do a better job, or at least try to do a better job at screening and keeping some of these people that are on the edge and too overly medicated from getting access to guns. And that's a very tricky thing, but there is an avenue and a discussion to be had about that. This does nothing except make you feel better and make a bunch of people that are in the electorate think that, hey, government cares.
Government cares. They care, Duane.
It's just crazy.
They care.
It's just crazy.
They care. They all care.
Obama's going to do his town hall meeting tonight on CNN.
Yeah, that closed town hall meeting that they're approving people to go in and out of. I mean, I think it was on the campus that some of the students were objecting to this. I forget which campus it's going to be at. But I won't be watching it. I'll be doing other things.
He's actually in D.C. right now, and after this thing's over with, he's going to be part of the Anderson Cooper follow-up panel to analyze what the president said or didn't say over the next hour. And that's going to be kind of interesting, because Hugh wasn't again, to anybody sensible on this, even if you're not a flaming gun nut, just somebody that says, okay, just show me the facts. Show me this is going to work. Evidence-based analysis here. Show me anything that what the president said is going to have any impact and do any good if you want to solve this problem. And it doesn't. There's nothing there that you can point to except just raw, naked, pandering politics.
I saw the Flaming Gun Nuts open for Strawman Purchasers in 1985. It was a pretty awesome concert.
Yeah.
Flaming Gun Nuts.
Flaming Gun Nuts, yes.
Is that the thing that hangs below the bumpers on trucks? Flaming gun nuts?
Could be. Parts of the South.
In parts of the South, you might actually see that. Flaming gun nuts. I'm sorry. It's the first show of the year, Duane. I'm just getting in the spirit of things here, because it's a ridiculous response. And here's the thing that I think that really kind of gets me about this. It's a ridiculously lame response. When he finally rolled this thing out, that was my response. No one puts the lame in lame duck like Barack Obama. Here you have this huge buildup, and you get this. It's not even an incremental change. It's basically a restatement of policy, plus some extra money for mental health and a few hundred extra people to work on background checks. Now, look, I mean, I purchased a pistol over the holidays, right? In fact, it was on New Year's Day. And I had to wait like 45 minutes for somebody to pick up the phone down there. So I appreciate the idea of hiring a few extra people to do these things. And the problem with that as a executive action in 2016 is that that's something he could have done in 2009, in 2010, 2011. Look, Congress appropriates money for the ATF. And aside from things that are specifically earmarked, and aside from things that are specifically banned, the executive branch gets to set its own priorities as to how that money gets spent. That's part of what makes elections matter, is that person who sits in the White House and the people he appoints gets to set those priorities once Congress appropriates the funds. So the idea that, well, we need extra money for mental health. Well, it's a $3.7 trillion budget. If you need an extra $500 million from that, why don't you take it from Solyndra and put it to mental health? Because I guarantee you, it'll be money better spent.
Right.
The same thing is true.
Speaking of money better spent, did you see what Hillary said today about the border fence? We can't afford it. We can't do it.
Of course we can't. We can't do it, but we can let everybody in, and we can apparently process them, but we can't build a wall.
You realize that she could build that wall out of Clinton Foundation spare or petty cash?
Yeah, what is the cost on building the wall? I mean, last time I looked, it's an intensive process, but
$3-4 billion.
Yeah, something like that.
Okay,
you're telling me out of a budget of $3.7 trillion that you can't find enough money to secure the nation's southern border,
which is technically one of the first jobs of government.
Yeah, that's in fact that and having a military and maintaining currency are pretty much the core responsibilities of any government, not just the American government, but any government.
On the good side, I got way into the weeds a few weeks ago and got admonished by everybody saying, well, I'll believe it when I see it's not going to happen. Remember me telling you about a conversation we had with John Thune about how they were going to change the rules on approps to get onto the bills?
Yes, I remember we were having that conversation.
We talked to Kevin McCarthy yesterday.
Yep.
The majority leader in the House, and apparently part of the Omni deal, which I don't know if it was talked about, it was news to me. McCarthy said that they tried to explain it earlier and nobody paid any attention to him. Part of the deal is they've got an agreement from Harry Reid for this next year that Democrats will not block. They will not block taking up appropriate bills. That was in part of the exchange for the Omni is. He agreed that if approps make it through the House, they should get on the floor of the Senate and they should at least come up for a vote one way or the other. Now, Harry Reid, I don't trust as far as I can throw him.
Yeah.
I understand that. But what I'm saying is, theoretically, that's going to happen. And as far as the retreat this year, the House Republicans, guess who they're going to be retreating with this time for the first time in actually many years? Senate Republicans.
Oh, is that right? That's interesting.
Which is interesting. So, I'm taking 2 and 2 and 2 and trying to come up to a certain number. And I get the Republicans are still going to find a way to disappoint us.
Well, speaking of which, okay, so Republicans are going to find a way to disappoint us.
But they didn't yesterday, did they?
Actually, they did. I'm going to be a pessimist. I'm going to be sour as hell. But we're talking about the Obamacare repeal finally getting through both chambers of Congress and going to the president's desk.
Yes.
Disappointing.
Why?
Because it's a year too late. That's the reason why. In fact, I have a column about that today.
Okay, a year too late. So they shouldn't have done it at all because it's bad timing?
Look, I think they should. I think it's something that they should do.
Okay.
But wait a minute. But at this point, let me quote our illustrious former Secretary of State. What difference at this point does it make?
I'll tell you what it makes. I'll tell you exactly what it makes.
Okay. Lay it on me, bro.
It goes to Obama. He's going to veto it, right?
Right.
The House is going to hold the override veto.
No, it's not.
Well, yes, it is. McCarthy said last night there was going to be a veto override.
They'll hold a vote. They're not going.
Yes, they will.
They will not get 2/3 to override it.
You're right, but guess what that will do? Everybody that's paying through the nose and didn't get what they were promised as far as Obamacare stuff? Guess what that's going to do? It's going to put people on record.
People are already okay. Look, people are already on record.
The chance to fix it, scrap it, do whatever else. If the Democrats sit there and they support the president on an override on something that's still a very unpopular thing, you don't think the NRCC and you don't think that's going to have any impact in any of the races? We're already told that foreign policy doesn't matter. Everything's all local. Everything's all personal, all financial to people in the election. If they're taking it in the shorts with all this extra penalties and stuff, What do you think that's going to do when that Democrat in an election year has to come back and say, well, yeah, you know what, we still need to keep it anyway, even though it doesn't work and it costs too much?
Yeah, no, I get that. I do. And
That,
there will be
that's,
some
that's
there will
why
be
now.
some value on that in a few states. In a few states where there's actually where you actually have swing seats up for election.
Is this not kind of a toss-up type of an election where it's a very divided electorate and every little bit helps when you can get it?
I get that. I do.
Shouldn't somebody write a book about something like that?
Somebody should write a book about this, which we'll get to in a moment. However, here's my problem with it.
I'm trying to box you in a corner.
I know you're trying to box me in a corner. Here's my problem with it. And by the way, this does actually come up in the book. First off, this is the type of thing that you do when you first take control. You set the marker then. Now, I understand that John Boehner at the time and Mitch McConnell wanted to get back to regular order because they wanted to show that the GOP was a governing party. But the problem with that is much like what the problem was with Barack Obama's reveal on gun control on Tuesday, is that they sold themselves in 2014 as something very different and then came back in and went back to try to get back to business as usual, status quo, anti, before Barack Obama and Harry Reid derailed everything in Congress. And that's not what people sent Republicans to Congress to do. They wanted to see this type of stand. They wanted to see them take a stand right from the beginning on this.
Right. Now, but we can look in the rearview mirror and say we wanted this, we wanted this, we wanted that. But again, if they're doing what you wanted them to do, even though it's late, they finally got the message and did it through reconciliation, and they did what.
But here's the problem with that. Here's the problem with that is that at this point, it's lost its dramatic. You've set the marker a year too late. Now you're doing it not right before, but pretty close to an election.
Yeah.
Where they're going to try to make the same argument that they made in 2014 and then pulled a bait and switch on voters. This is the reason why people are so angry with Republican leadership in the primary election. For that matter, Democrats have a similar problem in their primary as well.
So better not to do anything at all?
No. It's fine to do it. I'm just not. I don't think it's anything to get excited about. This is something that, I mean, to me, it's almost utterly unremarkable at this point.
I'm not saying I'm necessarily excited about it. What I'm saying is, we like to blast them whenever they do something wrong, and Lord knows they do things wrong. But when they actually do something that's good, we still got to blast them.
Well,
it's like,
so we're a year into this, right?
Yeah.
Okay, we finally got around to the repeal, right?
Yeah.
What's the replacement? We've been talking about this now for 6 years, and the Republican Party still doesn't have a replacement plan for Obamacare. I mean, they don't. Paul Ryan at least is saying, look, we are going to get one done, and we're going to get one done in the next few weeks because it's just got to get done. And that's something, Paul Ryan is still, Paul Ryan is an improvement over Boehner, no doubt about it. He's got the right idea. He understands the tenor of the electorate. He's trying to respond. He's just coming into the game very, very late and about 3 touchdowns behind. And they've had 6 years to come up with an idea, and they haven't done it yet. They had a year. Excuse me. They had the opportunity to do what they're doing right now a year ago, and they didn't do it.
Okay.
And so
as Ryan's fault?
Well, first off, Ryan is a part of the Republican leadership. He was at the time. He's now the top leader in the Republican caucus.
He was the chair Ways and Means. He was in House leadership. Did he tell Boehner what to do at all times?
He was the vice presidential nominee of this party in 2012. He understood what the issues were. He understood what the issue of Obamacare was. I'm telling you, it's not that it's a bad thing. It's just that it's kind of pointless now. You can chalk up the win, but here's what I found in the book, Going Red, which will come out from Crown Forum Books in mid-April this year. People want solutions. At this point in time, what they want in 2016 is practical solutions to these issues. It's the time for doing the symbolic action was 2014, early 2014, I would argue, but in 2015, in 2016, what people want to see is somebody with pragmatic solutions. The Republican Party has had 6 years to come up with an alternative that they can coalesce around
Agreed.
on Obamacare. So when you pass the Obamacare repeal and stick it on Obama's desk and there's no alternative, that is not going to impress people. And I can tell you it's not going to impress people. What people want to know is, it's fine and good. You guys have been complaining about Obamacare. This is a 64th vote, by the way, in the House on repealing Obamacare. And you've had 64 votes on this, and you haven't come up with a solution. That's what people are going to care about, especially in the swing states. What's your solution? Now, they have time to do that now. But honestly, this is the type of, what was the phrase from Animal House? It's time for a stupid, pointless gesture, and we're just the people to do it.
Oh, okay.
That's
fine.
That's what this is. It's kind of a stupid, pointless gesture at this point because they don't have a solution in place that they don't have an alternative. They can say, Obama vetoed this, and we have this great plan sitting right here, and we could have implemented it tomorrow. No, they don't have that. Obama vetoed this, and we still don't have anything to replace it with. And that to me, and I think to swing voters, is going to be a dispositive issue for them, is that the Republicans want to tear this thing down, but they don't have anything to replace it with.
Well, okay. And I understand the criticism. I take the criticism. I would just counter and say, I am in the here and now and looking forward. I can always look back and say, this sucked, this sucked, this sucked. We can say that about the Iran deal. We can say that about whatever else.
Well, we can always say that about the Iran deal. I mean, there's no process argument on the Iran deal.
We can go back and say things sucked, but I don't think that we should say that present performance should be altered because of they should have done it sooner.
Well, I think what the issue is for me here is that we're
if
still
you want the replacement thing, that's fine.
No, we're still having process. The problem is
you will see a replacement thing this year.
The problem is that we're still having process arguments. By the way, that was the argument in 2015. Oh, well, We've got to fix the process. We've got to fix the process. Voters don't give a damn about the process. They really don't. You and I do because we find it interesting. But voters, by and large, really don't care. What they care about is outcomes. They don't care about process.
The budget was a 2-year budget. That's already in place, right? So they don't have to pass that again. That's already in place.
Yes.
All they got to do this year is approach bills. And apparently, Harry Reid has said that he's going to allow those bills to come to the floor.
That's process.
Mitch McConnell,
That's process.
I understand that. But here's where process matters. When Mitch McConnell brings that when he gets to 12 approach bills, guess which one's going to come to the floor first? I guarantee it ain't going to be health and safety.
No, it'll be defense. It'll be defense.
It's going to be defense.
Yeah.
Because then I know that Democrats can't hold it hostage.
I'm not saying that process doesn't matter. I'm saying to most voters, process doesn't matter.
You and
I see the long game in process. Most voters do not.
The process either blocks what you want to happen or it allows what you want to happen. When that defense approach bill gets on the floor, it's going to get marked up. It's going to get muddied up a little bit. But by and large, it's going to be what we want it to be because the genesis of it in the House is going to be what we want it to be. Mac Thornberry's a good guy. There's a lot of good people that we have in this. So you're going to get the money and the funding to the military we've been screaming about for a long time. And it's not going to get, relatively speaking, held as hostage as it was in this process this last year. When that gets through, what's Obama going to do? Say no? I'm not going to sign a defense authorization bill because I can't get what I want out of it.
Yeah, he might cry a little bit too.
Yeah, good luck with that. Please bring that. Please bring that fight to me. Are Democrats going to block it from a final vote and right in front of an election and say, well, we don't think it's necessary to fund the military right now. Climate change. They're just not going to do that.
You don't think so?
By itself, individually, when it's on the floor. I don't think so.
Well, we'll see. They haven't been shy about doing that stuff in the past. Election years are not.
Because the entry level vote to even bring it to the floor, they don't even have to hold a vote. They just send a slip in saying I object, and I've got 35 with me or whatever else. We're not going to allow it to a vote, and so it never even gets on camera. You're now going to have this on the floor and talked about and debated, and there are people that still follow what goes on. Maybe you and I are the only ones that watch it, but there are reporters, there are politicos, there are news stories that say, well, the Senate tried to come to a vote on the defense authorization bill today, but it was blocked by Democrats, because that's what actually did happen this time.
So you think the media is going to report it that way? All these reporters that are watching this, you
don't think the Washington Examiner is? You don't think the Washington Post is? You don't think?
No, the Washington Post will say Democrats reacted to Republican writers in the bill that are terrible.
There's no writers.
Terrible. There's always going to be writers on these bills. Don't kid yourself. There's always writers on. There's always amendments. There's always writers, and they're going to say, "Oh, well, there's this writer on the bill that is absolutely horrible," and Democrats had to rebuke the Republican majority. I mean, come on. You know that's how that's going to get reported, right?
In some places, not all.
In the places,
Dan Ball shoots straight.
Yeah, I would say Dan Ball shoots straight.
Robert Costa shoots straight. James Homan shoots straight.
Yeah.
Chris Cillizza, most of the time, shoots pretty straight.
Oh, I think Chris shoots pretty straight. But those guys aren't the ones that are going to be doing those reports. Robert Costa's on the campaign trail. Robert Costa's on the campaign trail. Dan Balls is on the campaign trail. The people who cover Congress are the ones.
And you don't think there's going to be a political fallout for the Democrats saying no to the defense in 3 months before an election?
I think you're fooling yourself, sir.
Well,
I think you're fooling yourself. I think you're fooling yourself as to what the media environment is going to be as we approach a general presidential election. This is not a media environment that's going to.
How do you think Drudge is going to report it?
That's a good question. I'm not sure that Drudge is going to care.
Really?
No. I mean, when was the last time you saw a red screaming headline over a budget? And Drudge.
No. What I'm saying is, you don't think somebody at Drudge is going to say Democrats say no to military funding right before the election?
Sure.
Nobody's going to see that.
I think that the people who tune into Drudge are probably already going to be mostly voting for Republicans anyway.
You don't think there's anybody else in the country except Republicans that go to Drudge?
I would say that the majority of people who go to Drudge are people who are already politically engaged and who probably already have their sides chosen. And I would say the majority of those are probably Republican voters or Libertarian voters.
Don't get me wrong. MSM is still MSM. I'm not deluding myself at all. What I am saying is we've got a little bit more of the market share than we used to 4 years ago.
We do. And Hot Air, the same thing, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to make sure that we explain it properly. But look, we did that in 2012 too. So did Drudge. So did the Hugh Hewitt show.
Yeah.
And we couldn't pull it across the finish line. Why? Because we didn't understand the ground game, which you'll be able to find out more about in Going Red coming in April 2016. But also
speaking of ground game, what do you think about that New Hampshire poll that shows Rubio climbing in a hurry? I thought that was really interesting.
That's interesting. I mean, I think it still showed him third, if I'm not mistaken, right?
No, he put him in second.
Put him in second place, right? Okay.
Put him in second.
Yeah, it's interesting.
And David Drucker wrote a story the end of last week, I think. Maybe it was early last week. I forget with the holidays. Fine reporter over at the Washington Examiner, but he said all this talk about how Rubio's just mailing it in and not doing anything as far as a ground game and putting people in place in Iowa, New Hampshire, and the early states, and confounding his donor base and all this stuff. There was apparently, according to David Drucker, people are really underestimating what Rubio's actually doing on the ground there, and he's going to perform better than what people think he's going to because he's actually got some good people around him. I don't know.
He's last two polls there. One was the PPP poll. That was this week's. That's the one that you're talking about, where he's solidly in second place with 15% to Trump's 29%.
Right.
And there's the ARG.
It's surging ahead of Christie, and what's interesting about that is Christie, I don't think, has left the state in 3 weeks, and Rubio's just kind of ducking in and out. Well,
I'm not sure how much he's ducking in and out, by the way. I think he's more in than out in New Hampshire too.
He's doing a lot of South Carolina too.
Yeah, well, everybody needs to get into South Carolina here, but
I think at this point, I think South Carolina is going to be the one that decides it.
Well, Let's take a look at that, because I don't necessarily know that South Carolina polling puts anybody in terribly good position up against Trump, and Rubio's a distant third right now in South Carolina. Cruz is in second place.
Now, and I understand that. Here's the question, though. You saw the advisory panel, the Religious Liberty Advisory Panel.
I did actually. Great idea from Marco Rubio.
And who's on there?
I saw that Pastor Rick Warren was on there, but I don't recall the other ones who were.
That's gonna play very interestingly in South Carolina with Ted Cruz thinking he was going to round up all the evangelical support. Now he's got a lot of evangelical support himself, but Rubio's going to with that Rick Warren move. He's got his detractors, but he's certainly got a lot of adherents all over the country as well. That's certainly not going to hurt. Especially also having the de facto endorsement of Tim Scott and Trey Gowdy. It's going to be interesting to see if that plays into it as well.
So here's my question for you. Did you read the Ken Vogel, Daryl Samuelson report on Donald Trump's ground game?
No, I did miss that.
You should read that, because I know that I've been one of the people that's been sort of assuming this, is that Donald Trump isn't spending a lot of money. He isn't putting together a big organization, and it looked like what he wanted to do was run the sort of like the reductio ad absurdum Republican presidential campaign of the 30,000-foot approach, and just assume that people will show up to the polls on their own. But apparently, the Trump folks have reached an agreement with L2, which is, I know this firm. They helped me out with the book too. Actually, they did it gratis as a sort of a friendship thing, and they have some serious data, and it's allowing the Trump people to input their own data. They're getting a different thing than I got. I got sort of the generalized look at L2 stuff, which was very, very helpful for me for the book. But they're apparently spending money on data. They just, I think in the last month or so, got access to the RNC's voter data. And so they're sharing now with the RNC the stuff that they're doing.
Right.
It sounds at least it looks like they're putting some effort and some resources into GOTV that people kind of assumed wasn't happening. You may want to get Ken or Darren on the show to talk more about what this is, what the limitations might be, because we still haven't seen the fourth quarter spending. Third quarter spending didn't show a whole lot of investment, but that may have changed in the fourth quarter. So you may be looking at a guy who's at, I'm looking at New Hampshire right now, the RCP polling average. He's in the high 20s as opposed to everybody else being in the teens or lower. And if he's got a ground game that supplements that will actually turn out those diffident voters that might not necessarily vote in Republican primaries, but will if they're properly motivated, I don't know that it matters whether Rubio's in second place in New Hampshire or Ted Cruz has got a good organization in Iowa. You get Trump in there and he scores well in Iowa, wins New Hampshire, wins South Carolina, which is the way it looks from the polling right now. And I don't know how you get past the Donald Trump nomination.
Well, here's the way I see it. Taylor Swift is arguably the biggest selling pop star around right now, right? Or in the top tier, certainly.
Or as I call her in dealing with my granddaughter, T-Swizzle, because it apparently annoys my granddaughter. So
okay, so T-Swizzle is in Des Moines, Iowa, on part of a North American leg of her tour, and does a concert in Des Moines, right?
Yeah.
How many people show up in Des Moines to see Taylor?
Everybody.
Right, 30,000, however big the room is, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, maybe 80,000, 100,000.
Now, it's February 1st in Iowa. It's 100 below in a church basement. Taylor is nowhere near. T-Swizzle is in Panama, or she's in South America, tanning right now. Okay, she's long gone. Tour's gone. Concert's over. How many T-Swizzle fans are going to gather to talk about T-Swizzle for 4 hours on a Tuesday night in a church basement in Iowa?
Okay, but isn't that an argument that pretty much applies to every candidate there? If they've got ground forces, if they've got a good ground game, they get their people out to those caucuses.
What I'm saying is none of the other candidates are drawing crowds because of a celebrity factor or because of a
Yes,
an entertainment, a
celebrity,
theatrical
celebrity.
performance.
They're not celebrities in
They're
the
not
same
celebrity
sense, right?
candidates,
Yes,
right?
I get that. Yeah, yeah,
Okay,
that makes
so
sense.
how many people are showing up to Trump because it's like the Grateful Dead for whatever's?
Trucking down to
Right.
New Orleans. Yeah, I
Did
get you.
people go see the Grateful Dead everywhere they went because they were the best band in the world? The groupies thought they were, but did
Yeah,
they
the
go
groupies
there?
thought they were. Yeah,
Okay, I mean, how many people are going to Trump because it's Trump and it's kind of cool to watch him in action because he's entertaining.
yeah. I would say probably the ones that are showing up to the rallies. Yes, but that's
Okay,
not. But that's not what
how
these
how
measurements
how
are.
much of that is going to actually translate into doing the hard work of actually going out and caucusing and doing whatever?
But that's not what this is. That's not what these polls are measuring, right? These polls are measuring people who are actually aligning themselves with Trump.
Okay,
So it's
then
two different. You're
then
talking about apples and oranges here. Yeah, the rallies might be overblown, but the polling seems to at least correlate with that. And if that polling is at least relatively solid, then you got to think if the guy's got a ground game, then that might really change the it might really change the outcomes here over something that over what we've been expecting. Now we'll know that more probably from New Hampshire than we will from Iowa. Although his numbers are pretty high in Iowa too.
and honestly, we are going to know more in 2 weeks, just because when you get that close in proximity, that's when things start truing
Yeah,
up. People,
the polling starts to firm up. Right. Yeah, you're right.
it firms up because the one thing that is consistent in the polling is historically to today is that people say who they're for and who they're leaning for. Iowans don't make up their mind at the last minute, and everybody knows that.
Right. New Hampshire.
Rick Santorum and Huckabee both were not leading Iowa until the last minute. At the last minute, the evangelicals went their way in each respective election and or caucus, and they pulled it out.
Yeah. No, I get you. I get you on that, and I agree with you. But what I'm saying is that the assumption that this guy's got no ground game, and so therefore this is all celebrity driven, that may be a problem for some of us down the road who are relying on that idea, because we'll know more when we see the fourth quarter spending. I'm not sure when those reports come out. I think they're going to be coming out pretty soon. But if he's spending a lot of money in Iowa, New Hampshire, and South Carolina on organizing, and let's face it, this guy is, I mean, he's a businessman. He understands how to invest in infrastructure when it comes to his organizations. I'm just saying that he may be more real than people seem to have given him credit for.
And you got to think that he's certainly playing from a position of strength right now. Nobody would deny that. I'm just saying my hunch tells me Ted Cruz wins Iowa. My hunch tells me that New Hampshire is going to be more of a dogfight. Could be Trump. Christie could still rise. Rubio showing up, it seems like a long shot to me, but who knows? But even if Trump wins New Hampshire, now you go to South Carolina, and that's going to be a dogfight. If it's Cruz again, then all of a sudden I'm not sure where Trump plays after that.
That's a good question. I don't know where Trump plays after that either. If he can't win in Iowa, New Hampshire, I think that erodes his standing in South Carolina
the
and
invincibility thing, and
yeah.
all of a sudden the wheels start coming off the wagon. And Rubio looks really solid in Nevada. He looks very solid in Florida. Who knows who's going to win, but you got to think that if Jeb Bush isn't anywhere by New Hampshire, he's got to get out. You got to think Kasich's got to get out.
I'm surprised they're still in.
I understand that, but if neither one of them, win or place in New Hampshire, their money's going to dry up.
That's right. Their money's going to dry up, and it's probably already drying up, even as we speak, because it's getting down to the last 4 weeks. And I think that the donors in these cases are going to start looking at the most likely alternatives to Donald Trump.
And if Huckabee if Huckabee and Santorum don't win or place in Iowa, if they are distant also rans, by the time they get down to South Carolina, you got to think Huckabee's going to be gone. You got to think Carson's probably going to be gone because he's nowhere. I think by the time we get to mid February, the field's going to be half of what it is now.
Well, that's still not much of an accomplishment because there's still 13 people in the field.
12.
12. Yeah.
Knock it down to 6. It's going to get but if you knock it down to 6, that's how coalitions start building in a hurry.
Pataki pulled out. That was a body blow to the Republican Party, wasn't it?
Exactly.
As Jazz put it, literally dozens of people are going to have to find another candidate to support now.
That's what it was.
That's what it was. All right. Well, I know we're going to have to wrap this up here pretty quick, but what's coming up on tonight's Hugh Hewitt show?
Well, we've got Ted Cruz on tonight. Speaking of Iowa, we've got Jeb Bush.
I just got something from Ted Cruz. Ask him if I won the engraved shotgun.
Yeah, we will get right on.
You get right on that one there, right?
Jake Tapper's going to be on tonight. David Drucker, the aforementioned David Drucker, is going to be tonight. Lilacs is going to be on. We've got all sorts of fun stuff ahead.
All sorts of fun stuff. That's coming up at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Central, and 3 p.m. on the left coast. And you can watch this, by the way, on the Universe, because Hugh. I should take this back now because Hugh's not in studio today, right?
No, he's actually back in D.C. at the Kirby Center of Hillsdale College.
So do they have a camera set up so that you have the Universe live show going?
We're going to try.
Okay, well, see.
Right.
So show up and see what happens with the Universe. HUGHNIVERSE.com, the troll-free web surfing experience for true Hugh Hewitt fans. I'm a member. Duane's a member. Y'all should be members by now. This is 2016. Your New Year's resolution should be to join the Universe if you've not already done so. It's inexpensive. It's a lot of fun. Got some great original content from James Lilacs, Mark Stein, and of course you got Duane FM on Sundays. You've got Triple 12 on Saturdays, and you've got Conservative LA Radio on Fridays. What's coming up on Duane FM this weekend?
This weekend, I'm trying to remember what the actual theme is. There was a goofy theme I did. I'll tell you in just a second. This Sunday is January the 9th?
9th, I think it is. Yeah.
This weekend is going to be
show prep.
I can tell you.
This is show prep.
No, I can't tell you.
Can't tell you. It's a mystery. It's the mystery medley from Duane on Duane FM on the Universe this Sunday. So you have to just tune in. You have to be a member of the Universe. Tune in, figure it out. So be sure to do that. Now, if you can't find it, if you just can't find it in your hearts or in your wallets to join the Universe, you can listen to Hugh Hewitt on the AM radio dial. Duane, what should people do if they can't find it on the AM radio dial?
Well, what I think they should do is they should do what John Kirby did at the State Department yesterday, which is we don't have to admit reality on anything. We can just refuse to recognize that North Korea is a nuclear state. And because we refuse to recognize, they're not. So we can just refuse to recognize that radio station general manager is a general manager. We can make the reality whatever we want it to be. If they say no, they're not going to sign us to an affiliate. We're just going to, in our heads, they are an affiliate. We just make them affiliates because that's what we want reality to be.
And then magically the show will start playing. I was actually going to suggest, threatening to take executive action and then just merely turning the dial a little bit so you can find it. But if you can't,
that's a fine choice as well.
You like that choice? I think that's a great choice. If you can't do that, then what you can do is simply go to HughHewitt.com and listen to the audio stream over the internet. And that, again, starts at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Central, 3 p.m. on the left coast. Duane, Generalissimo Patterson of the Hugh Hewitt Show, thanks for being with us today, sir.
See you guys.
See ya. And joining me now is Peter Berg, the producer of Live to Tell, a brand new series that's going to be airing on the History Channel. A very successful man in Hollywood, both in front of and behind the camera. Also the director, many of you will recall, of Lone Survivor a couple of years ago. Peter, welcome to the show. And this sounds like a really fascinating project, Live to Tell. Tell us a little bit more about this.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it, and I'm glad to be here. I'm very proud of this show. It's kind of a show that was probably, the result of my experience making Lone Survivor with and getting to know so many members of the special operations community and realizing that there are so many stories, and there have been so many incredible examples of bravery and triumph and courage in both Iraq and Afghanistan since this conflict has started. And we wanted to be able to tell more of these stories, and we thought it might be interesting to do it in a documentary format with the real soldiers telling their real stories, and using footage that was shot during those conflicts, and some recreations that we've done. But basically, it's a great way to experience firsthand what it was like and has been like for these men and women who have been in some very hellacious conflicts.
You seem pretty uniquely positioned to tell this story, first off, because of your experiences with Marcus Luttrell and Lone Survivor, but also because you've done some excellent documentary series in the past. I have to tell you, I was a big fan of State of Play, especially the segment on overzealous parents in sports. I just thought that was a brilliant segment, and you were both part of that, and of course, exec produced it. So the documentary format seems to be something that you're getting more and more drawn to. And even in Lone Survivor, which was kind of a documentary style of filming that story.
Well, it's a style that I like, and I don't know. As I get a little bit older, I find that documentaries are the most compelling and inspirational for me form of content out there. And I do love making films, and I'll continue making them. But I just finished watching Making a Murderer on Netflix, and I watch something like that, and I find it to be extremely compelling. And it's hard, for a scripted television show or film to compete with that kind of truth.
In fact, it's getting a lot of play right now. Making a Murderer is that's having an impact. Whether or not, I haven't seen the series myself, but I live online, as you probably know, Peter, and I work in that sort of in that environment, and I see a lot of people talking about that. So a documentary like Live to Tell certainly has the potential of really opening up people's eyes as to the experiences of these special operations forces in a way that maybe just hasn't happened yet. We just haven't told those stories.
Yeah, I just don't think we can think about this, watch it, or talk about it enough. And the reality is, we are involved in these and have been involved in this war, which is the longest war in the history of our country. It's clearly not going away. Al-Qaeda seems to have reinvented itself into something more horrific and more violent in ISIS. And we're going to continue to ask our men and women to go out there and deal with this threat. And it is a very real threat. And I think it's critical that we understand, who we're sending and what happens to these men and women when we send them there, what they do. And, if a show like Live to Tell can help continue that argument and be a catalyst for thought in regards to our veterans and our soldiers, I think that's very important.
Peter, you're dealing with a number of contributors in this sense, people who've been over there, special operations forces who've come back, are telling you these stories. What was the biggest surprise that you experienced in talking with these men about their experiences in Afghanistan and Iraq? I think for me, something that resonates more than almost anything else isn't so much what happened to them when they were out there, which is always interesting and oftentimes very tragic and at times very disturbing, and at times very inspiring. That I was ready for. I think the big issue for me is what happens to these guys when they come home. And, it's something we all are aware of, and everybody talks about helping veterans and the complexities of, re-entering civilian society. But when you really get to spend time with these soldiers, particularly special operations soldiers who, really were the ones on the front line, these are the guys that we were asking to go into villages and, where bad guys were surrounded by children and women and innocent civilians, and we're asking these soldiers to get in there, kill the bad guy and not break any, china while they're at it, and then come home. And it's very hard. The assimilation back into civilian life is not an easy transition. And I think that seeing that firsthand was something that has really stuck with me. the I guess one question that I'd have about that is, do you think that having these stories, do you think having these guys see these stories be told in this fashion, in honest, direct fashion, rather than perhaps I don't know, I don't want to knock scripted television shows, but there's obviously a lot of those. It's for entertainment, and you hear a lot of complaints about, well, it's entertaining, but it's not really exactly what the experience was. Do you think having the documentaries about this and films like Lone Survivor, which is really driven by the personal recollections of the person who was, the people who were went through that, do they find that a way to ease that transition, or at least to feel as though people are trying to reach out in that sense?
Do the soldiers feel that way?
The soldiers feel that way. Yeah. Do the soldiers feel that way?
Yeah. I think so. I think that one of the things that's special about Live to Tell is that the two, my two executive producers and the guys who really did the heavy lifting on the show are both ex-military. One was a Ranger and one was a Navy SEAL, and they were the ones that were asking the questions and doing the interviews, and so they were able to bring out sides and personality traits of these soldiers that you or I probably would have a lot more trouble doing. The veterans felt a lot more comfortable telling the stories, and as a result, they were able to sort of open up, and you were able to see the humor and the vulnerability and sides of them that normally you wouldn't. And I think that's good for us watching, to be able to see those sides of our soldiers, to sort of understand who they are in a more complex and genuine way. And I think it's probably really good for a lot of these soldiers to be able to sit there and tell their stories in a way that feels authentic to them, and lets them feel as though people are able to maybe understand who they are a bit more comprehensively, better.
I think that's a great point, Peter. And just from my own experience with family members who have served in combat, they generally just don't like to talk about it with people who haven't been there and who don't understand the context of what they're saying. And my father is a great example of this. He was a Korean War veteran. And I finally, at one point, I was a kid at the time, I said, "Did you actually have a rifle?" Because he never told those stories. And he says, "Of course I had a rifle."
We've talked about that. There's that element of the quiet professional, and these guys generally don't like to talk about what they do, and they certainly don't like to talk about it to people that don't understand how to talk about it. So the fact that we had, veterans interviewing veterans, I think, helped, make them open up more.
I want to ask you a little bit about the reenactments. I mean, this is something that obviously is going to make the experience more compelling for viewers. Is there a balance that you have to strike in the reenactments? Because obviously it might be a little touchy when you're dealing with a documentary series. What was the process for that?
Well, we figured there would be three aspects of the show. One would be the interviews. The second would be, real existing footage from the battles that we're talking about, and the third would be the reenactments. And we very quickly found that the reenactments were by far our least favorite. And when you and they became a much smaller part of the show because they paled in comparison to just quite simply these guys talking, close-ups of these soldiers telling their stories was extremely impactful, and the real footage was so impactful. So I think the amount of reenactments that actually ended up being in the show is very, very small, and we all kind of felt that way, that they didn't serve the show as well as just the real guys talking and the real footage. So there's not a whole lot of reenactment in the series.
Well, you have to have something visual going on in order to bring the viewer in, and so I think everybody understands that. On the plus side, though, as technology has improved, even over the last 15 years, there's just a whole lot more opportunity to get footage, to get video, because the miniaturization of the cameras, the miniaturization of the storage, it makes it a lot. It makes it a lot easier to get that. But how much of that is was actually accessible to you? Because it would seem to me that
a lot.
Really? Okay.
A lot. Yeah. I mean, more than we thought. And what we found is there was, for the reasons you just said, there is obviously a lot of footage out there. We were able to get that, and this is just my case. For me, just again, I was surprised at how engaging just watching these guys talk was, and sometimes it reminds me of the very best of 60 Minutes was always just very raw, simple interviews. That great stories told in a very authentic way can be, I think very refreshingly engaging, and so I don't know. I think we found a good balance between pre-existing footage, real footage, the interviews, and some recreation.
Did you get a lot of cooperation from the Department of Defense on this, or was that just more or less a non sequitur? There was just not too much involvement there.
Not really. I mean, this was something we didn't need DoD approval for. We were all very conscious of not revealing anything that was classified, and we didn't. But now that it's out, we've been talking to the Department of Defense, and they like the show very much. Everyone that we've talked to from the military, but we made this independently of the DoD.
Well, it's interesting too, because a lot of times when you have this type of either documentary or scripted production, you need to get some of that. So the film didn't come from the DoD, then it came from other sources.
Yeah, there are so many ways to get it, and because we didn't. Normally, when you used to get DoD cooperation, it's you're asking for assets, tanks and planes and boats.
Sure,
we didn't need any of that.
Right. So let's.
But hey, they're looking at me right now. I got to run. So maybe just one more or two more.
Okay, so the first episode airs on the History Channel when?
This Sunday at 10:00.
And what can we expect from the first episode?
The first episode. The first episode is has to do with the Battle of Ramadi and a soldier named Mark Lee who was tragically killed in that battle.
Well, Peter, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it. Big fan of your work and looking forward to this series. Peter Berg, Live to Tell, History Channel on Sunday. Be sure to tune in. Thanks again, sir.
Thank you.
And we're back live here on the Ed Morrissey Show. I want to thank everybody for being with us today. Hope you enjoyed that interview with Peter Berg. He's I've liked Peter Berg. He's a excellent filmmaker, and some of you might remember The Last Seduction with Linda Fiorentino. He was the one who played the male lead in The Last Seduction. It's a great film noir, a little interesting to watch, but I didn't bring that up obviously because doesn't really have much to do with what he's doing there. But if you do get a chance to watch the State of Play documentary series, he produced that. He's also the on-air moderator for the panels. There was one in particular that was really good, and it's the one I mentioned in the interview. Is this the one about parents in sports, and one of the people on the panel was Todd Marinovich. And for those of you who are old enough to remember Todd Marinovich, he was the guy that was basically groomed since birth to be an NFL quarterback by his father, and it's a very interesting discussion. Todd Marinovich is not that much younger than I am now. And so if you get a chance, watch that. It's really a good, interesting episode about how far parents take pushing their kids in sports. And, we've been talking about that for probably 20, 30 years. And I have to say, I was pretty lucky. My dad was not like that. He was a really good sports dad in the fact that if I wanted to play the sports, he'd come out and help out and coach, but he would make me take it seriously to the point of, I had to show up for practice. I had to play hard. I had to finish the season, with one exception, because there was one exception that, where he agreed that, it was probably time to pull the plug on not a terribly healthy environment. That was the one year I played, suburban league football actually, and was showing up to all the practices but not getting in any of the games. And we both had enough about 6 games into it and said sayonara. I wasn't very good at it anyway, but don't get me wrong. I was not a star, but it would have been nice to actually get playing times. We were in a game once where I think we were leading like 50-0, and the coach still had his starters out in the field. The guy was an idiot, just an absolute idiot. So I was really fortunate in that sense. My dad was involved. He was supportive, but he wasn't trying to relive his childhood through me. And so I had a great time. I thought the most fun times I had in Little League were when my dad was involved. And the one year my dad wasn't able to be involved because he had work issues going on, it turned into another one of these messes. I finished out the year and I said, that's it, I'm done. Had other things I wanted to do anyway. I wasn't going to be Boog Powell. So there you go. All right. So I want to thank again everybody who's with us today. I definitely want to thank the folks in the chat room. Before we get to that, actually, one more thing. I am actually going to be doing Relevant Radio all next week in the afternoons from 2 to 5 Central Time. So that's 3 to 6 Eastern Time. Starting on Monday, going through Friday. I may miss one of those days for personal reasons, but I'll be on the air most of the week. So we won't be doing Ed Morrissey shows live from my office, from my home office. So, I'll have show posts up for the stuff I'm doing on Relevant Radio too. You'll see it on hotair.com. But just to let you know, it's going to be all on the regular air next week. So you get a chance if you want to call in and talk and do all those kinds of fun things. Be sure to join us for that. So the next Ed Morrissey Show episode is going to be at least a week from now. And we'll see what the schedule is going to look like because there's actually some corporate meetings coming up too. So it may be 2 weeks from today before we get a chance to do another Ed Morrissey Show. I'll know more about it when it comes up, but we'll figure it all out. And we'll get Andrew back on. He couldn't be on this week anyway. I had to skip Tuesday because of some other issues that were going on. But at any rate, great to have you here with us. We'll be back at a certain point in time, but I'll be back all next week on Relevant Radio. Be sure to come over and listen there. All right, let's play a little walking music here if we could. I'll turn up the radio here and play a little TEMS walking music here. Trying to make sure it's not getting too loud. All right, who's been in the chat room? Monster is back with us from e3gazette.blogspot.com. He's on Twitter at @SumErgoMonstro. Be sure to follow him on Twitter if you're not already doing so. Putting the word member next to it kind of suggests something. I'm kind of trying to think of what that was reference to, but not sure. All right, Monster. Guelph, Conservative and Liberal Hands. Fausta from FaustusBlog.com, a great Western Hemisphere blog. I read her every single day, and so should you. Little known fact about Fausta, she was actually the inspiration for The Last Seduction with Linda Fiorentino. No. Well, I need to, and especially Fausta has seen the movie. I'm in deep trouble. The next time she sees me, she's going to come after me with the baseball bat, which is not something that actually happens in The Last Seduction. Mr. Fastbucks, Juanito Cabron, Mr. Fastbucks, my sister's brother, Prairie Dog SD, Rick 2, Via Paso at the Ancestral Morrissey Months. Hi, Mom. Oh, good. Fausta LOL'd. I might not be in trouble. We'll see. And, of course, behind me, keeping me on the straight and narrow, the first mate, heading into 2016. This is like, what, her 8th year in a row, 9th year in a row, I think, having to ride herd on her obstreperous husband. So, until we meet again, hopefully you'll be with me on Monday at Relevant Radio. This is the Ed Morrissey Show. Come back and see us. We'll be back. Thanks again. Talk to you later.